This week on The Record, voters head to the polls Tuesday with big races on the ballot. St. Louis Alderwoman Anne Schweitzker joins us from the new 1st Ward. Will voters approve local sales taxes on recreational marijuana, and why you might get taxed twice if you live in St. Louis County? Plus, the first chance to rewrite the city charter in 109 years. How a state takeover of the police department could invite an old era of corruption and inside influence. Former Mayor Francis Slay reminds lawmakers the way things used to be. And the persecuted prosecutor goes on offense. Stark comments from Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner. We check the record on her claims about high crime. It's all coming up right now on The Record. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. We start this week with Anne Schweitzker, an alderwoman running for the 1st Ward. Joining us now, we're going to kick things off right away with you. You're running against Tony Kirchner. Congratulations on making it through the primary there. I think it was just was there a third candidate there?
Yes.
I should know that. Anyway, this is an interesting race. I was just overhearing some of your calls offset, and when voters look at your Twitter page, it's interesting. You are one of a few members of the Board of Aldermen who are always tweeting at the city saying, hey, there's this stuff, come clean it up.
Right.
Is that what it takes, is to tweet at the city?
Well, I was tweeting to Citizen Service Bureau, which anyone can do. It's a way of just logging concerns that people have with a variety of things. And so as alderperson and just as a regular citizen, as I'm walking around, I'll make sure I'm recording what's going on and letting the city know about the issues that exist.
How do you grade the progress or lack thereof, the obstacles that might be there in getting St. Louis to a better spot when it comes to cleaning up trash or picking up these problems that you highlight so often? What's the issue?
I think a lot of it is city workers. The city workers will tell you that they work for the city of St. Louis because they love St. Louis, and city needs to love them back. We need better pay, better benefits for our workers so that we can make sure that they are able to keep working for the city.
Does the city have somewhat of an antiquated hiring process?
That is what I have heard about the hiring process, yes, that it has been sort of behind the times for a long time. The city of St. Louis, the Board of Aldermen is currently hiring workers, for example, and some of the information that we have hasn't been incredibly thorough about what workers have done and their histories. There's no cover letters, things like that. So a lot could be done.
Yeah, and there's this unique moment that voters will have on Tuesday, beyond just voting for candidates on the board or on the ballot, but they can also vote to create this new charter commission.
Right.
And go in there and change the city's sort of guiding document there. How will you be voting on that?
I'm a yes on Prop C.
Why?
I believe that it's important to be reviewing the governing document of the city of St. Louis. It hasn't had any sort of large review in 100+ years at this point, and it's important to look at it. I mean, women couldn't even vote when the charter was put into place. So it's time to take a look. A lot of other cities, municipalities, counties across the country have reviews of their governing documents. The St. Louis County, for example, reviews its charter. One
of the things the charter protects is police and fire salaries. Mm-hmm. It links them together, basically, protecting them from being cut or slashed without broad political backlash. Do you want to see that change?
I do not.
Because?
I support police and fire, making sure that their pay is as good as we can get it, really. And what's really important about the Charter Commission is that the members of it will be chosen by the Board of Aldermen and the mayor, and the Charter Commission will work together to suggest things to go onto the ballot. Those items will go onto the ballot, and then city voters will choose what they want to pass or not pass.
The way it's been described to us by some of your colleagues, Annie Rice, an alderwoman, and the president of the board, Megan Green, they've said that the personnel department just has these sort of burdensome red tape obligations they have to go through to even get people into some jobs, and that if they go through this charter commission, maybe they can hire more easily. Do you see any other upside in modernizing city government through this charter commission path?
I think the biggest thing for me about the Charter Commission is it's a chance to review the governing document holistically, as opposed to one-off things that show up in our ballot at regular times, which I support the ability for people to get through a petition process to get items on the ballot. However, when it's our charter and it's this large governing document, it makes a lot of sense to look at it holistically. So this will be an opportunity to do so. It will be an opportunity to do it every 10 years going forward, and it gives citizen input. It puts that at the very top of the priority list.
And on the vote to authorize marijuana sales tax, how will you vote there?
I'm voting yes on the local tax for marijuana.
A lot of money at stake. Where could that money go?
It could go a lot of different places, and I look forward to seeing what does happen. My concern is in St. Louis, we have some Concerns about the earnings tax with the court case that was recently decided in favor of some people who are no longer working in the city of St. Louis. This is an opportunity for the city to tax a product that people will be buying, and it's a way for the city to have more revenues coming in.
Have you seen any and the city charter right now, by the way, says that members of the board, like yourself, basically have, as I understand it, unfettered access to documents, data, things that the city has in its possession. So have you seen any budget guidance or any economic impact on just how big a hole that could blow in the budget if a court case unravels and says the earnings tax is not viable? How bad could that be?
It would be very concerning when the earnings tax is on our ballot every 5 years to be removed. And what I had read in the past is that it would take a variety of different taxes, that would all need to be passed by the voters to take what the earnings tax, to cover what the earnings tax currently pays for. So it's a huge problem if we lose the earnings tax in the city of St. Louis.
Can you put a number on it?
I don't have a
Ballpark?
number on the top of my head.
Okay. It'd be interesting to follow up. That is something to look at after this election. We had Mayor Jones on just recently, and she talked about, we asked her, what do you have to show for your 2 years in office? Mm-hmm. Set aside the ARPA money, set aside the RAM settlement money. What's the progress? And she pointed to expediting the delivery of city services. And she said there's this lose stat software that the city uses. Have you seen this?
I've not.
Okay. I presume you would have access to it if you asked for it.
Sure.
How do you grade the current delivery of city services? Have you seen any improvements or upgrades in the last 6, 9, 12 months?
I have seen an improvement. I think trash is being picked up a lot more consistently in the 13th Ward. The 911 calls are being answered quicker. Those are two of the things that I know my constituents have spoken to me about.
I imagine you'd be interested in seeing data that shows that progress.
Sure.
Should that data be public for everyone to see?
Yes.
How do you get that done?
I mean, the sunshine process is there for this exact reason. When the city has data and information, it's supposed to be available to the public through the sunshine process.
But as you know, Missouri law allows the city to place a transparency tax on that and charge people to get it. Is there a way for the board to require through an ordinance that these data are placed on a website or somewhere that everybody can see them?
I think that'd be worth looking into, yes.
How do you draw a distinction between yourself and Tony Kirchner?
I have 2 years experience on the job. My constituents know that I'm responsive to them, that I listen to them, that I vote with their best interests in mind, and I will be able to continue doing that if I'm reelected.
There have been a few forums where you and he have sort of been at the same place. There's one tonight, I think.
There is one tonight.
Where should voters go to hear more of that?
It's at 7 p.m. at Immaculate Heart of Mary.
And what? Give us a preview. What are we in for? Do you see platforms shaping up differently in terms of policies you support, policies he'd oppose?
You know, that's an interesting question. I haven't really gotten a lot of information about what he would do differently than I have already done. But I think that the things that we'll be talking about tonight are about public safety, they're about city services, the qualifications for the job, which I do think is the real difference.
Kim Gardner told her supporters earlier this week that she plans to seek a third term for re-election. Do you want to see a Democrat challenge her?
Yes.
What are you looking for in a candidate like that?
Someone who can work within the criminal justice system and take responsibility when they make mistakes and make sure that they're putting the safety of the city, of citizens in the city of St. Louis first.
You were one of a number of progressive Democrats who called her statement into question. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I believe you said
Sure.
It was concerning. Would we be in this situation with so many Democrats criticizing her if that initial statement of hers had not been so dismissive of the tragedy?
That's a really good question. There's always going to be a final straw if there is a group of people who decide that they're no longer able to have any support for someone.
And that's where you're at.
No, I do not support Kim Gardner.
So have you had any discussions, any people that you think might fit that bill who could challenge her?
I have someone in mind, yes, that I've talked to many times over the last few years about his potential candidacy, and I think he is very interested in the race.
Do you want to break any news on the record?
On the record, do I want to break any news? I feel like I should let him break his own news.
Let him break his own news. Okay, so it sounds like that's a bit of a tease. They call that in the business. All right. Before we go to some sound from Governor Parson from just earlier this week when he was in St. Louis, he's kind of not committing to vetoing or supporting this idea of a state takeover of the city police department. As you understand it, what's at stake there? Mayor Jones has said there could be a huge financial burden just in shifting the ownership there and the administrative change of all that. How do you see it, and how should city voters think about this idea that Jefferson City would come in, appoint this board, and they would take over control of the police department? How would voters notice a difference, if they would at all?
Right. The most important thing to me here is that people who live in the city of St. Louis have control over their elected officials, their administration, and their police department. If there is a state takeover, that is not the case. It's an entire state.
And we should not leave without noting it is your birthday. Happy birthday. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
On opening day, nonetheless.
Yes.
All right, Anne Schweitzker, thanks for joining us. We wanted to show you that soundbite from Governor Mike Parson, who was just in town earlier this week. Take a listen.
Governor, you've said you support local control. Mayor Jones has said that you don't have any interest in taking state control of the police department. If the Senate approves state control, will you veto it?
We'll see what that looks like. I mean, we're still in the process of that. We'll see what that looks like. That's been a discussion. It's been around for a long time. We'll see what that comes out. If it comes out of the Senate and the House, we'll take a look at it. But as I've always said, I'm never going to say, well, I'm going to veto or pass anything. I'll see what it looks like on that. But it's on the table.
He was the longest serving mayor in St. Louis history, and he's now on the record. Former Mayor Francis Slay, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Give our viewers some sense of what the struggle was like to pry control of the police department out of the state's hands more than a decade ago now.
Well, what we did was we went to the voters of the state of Missouri. This was the only department other than Kansas City in the state where the state actually controlled the police department. It was under the control of the governor. The governor made appointments to our police board, police members of the board, and that board governed the police department. They were not accountable directly to St. Louis city government.
What was, and as I understand it, it was quite the effort to, you tried a number of different ways to finally accomplish it. What was the motivation behind bringing local control back then? What was the problem that you were trying to fix?
Well, the problem was that we had a board that was, I think, generally it was a dysfunctional format where the board members were appointed by a governor, but there was really no accountability of the board members or accountability to the governor or the state for what was going on in the police department. We had police board members who would, not all of them, but some of them would, they'd have police officers drive them around, be their chauffeurs. They wanted badges.
The board members.
The board members. They liked some of them. Some of them liked walking around with badges.
Feel free to name any names here, man.
And no, and the other thing is, and this wasn't all of them, but it was one of these things where they got to make decisions on behalf of the department. And by the way, this is the biggest budget component in city government is the police department.
25 cents on the dollar in the city goes to the police.
It's the most expensive in city
more.
government. And so here's the biggest department financially, and arguably the most important, and it's going to be controlled by someone outside city government. So we had some police board members. They liked some. They liked to have be chauffeured around, as I said, by police officers. Some of them like wearing badges. Some of them, one of them actually was making passes at police officers. A male.
You're suggesting sexual harassment was?
One was making passes at police officers for promises of a promotion.
Okay.
Another one had a relative that was involved in a criminal situation that tried to pull the record or somehow
squash the evidence.
Squash the evidence.
Let me ask you this. Some of the advocates who are saying the state needs to retake control of the police department because crime has just gotten out of hand, and we think that the politicians are to blame. So we're going to take the politics out of it. Take us back again. It sounds like what you're saying is that politics wasn't really out of it back then either.
Well,
it was more of a
politics wasn't out of it, but here's what concerns me about the rhetoric I'm hearing from those that want to take the police department away from the city of St. Louis. First of all, there really is no accountability. When the state has control, there is no accountability at the state level. You tell me who's accountable for our police department. Where do you go if you have an issue with the police department?
Who do the commissioners answer to?
They're going to go to the mayor no matter what, and they're going to go to the alderman or whoever it is in city government. That's who's going to be accountable for the police department. That's the way it was before. That's the way it's always going to be. Even under state control, there's no accountability. The other thing is, those within state government that are asking for state control of the police department ought to just look in the mirror. I mean, what is the state doing to help us with crime here? They're not doing their job. What they're doing is they're allowing, they have gun laws that are so permissive that you have kids walking around the street with guns, teenagers with guns, automatic weapons, and there's nothing the police can do about it. Yet here they want to take control of dealing with crime in the city of St. Louis when they're not doing the job I believe they should be doing.
There's a long-standing urban-rural political divide on the issue of guns, and those political issues predate, this short last decade or so. When you saw the transition away from state control to local control, how long did it take? Did you see differences in the way police responded? Did you see any difference in the way the department was governed or the way it operated? What were the biggest changes you noticed?
Well, the biggest changes was the biggest change was that the accountability is where it always was in city government. In other words, you want the mayor and the elected officials in city government to be accountable for crime, and yet there's little they can do about it from a police department standpoint because that's under state control. And
what was your relationship with the police department? How would you describe it?
We used to haggle a lot over budget. It's the biggest budget item in St. Louis. But we had I was there with I think 4 different chiefs, 5 different chiefs while I was mayor.
Not all of them you hired.
And
right?
Well, they were hired under. Most of them were hired under the board, by the board.
So you got to hire the first mayor-hired police chief in like a century.
Yeah, I did, and we had a great relationship. He was an outstanding police chief. He moved on, and he's running a nationwide company now, but as director of their public safety. But yeah, we had. We had to work together, and we did everything. I tried everything we could to work with them. We had our ups and downs, but when you have, but in every case, it wasn't about state versus city control as far as the public's concerned. It's always people look at the mayor and look at city government. What are you doing about crime? What are you doing about the police department? Nobody was going to the governor asking the governor what the governor can do about it. And I can tell you, the entire time I was mayor for 16 years, there was one governor out of the 4 I worked with that asked me what they can do to help with crime, and that was after we had local control. So
governors are tuned out. You're saying they're distracted. They have other things on their plate.
They're dealing with the state, correct. They have other things on their plate, and they make appointments based upon a lot of different reasons. Part of it's political, and I get that part. We had some good police board members. I'm not suggesting they weren't, but we had some that weren't so good. But
the way the mayor has said it, and the Board of Aldermen President Megan Green have said it, is the person closest to the problem is the person closest to the solution. It sounds like you're striking a similar chord there.
Exactly. It's this is a city problem. The accountability is always going to be with the mayor and the mayor's office and the city. Nobody goes to the governor from St. Louis. Nobody goes to the state legislature and says, what are you going to do to help us with crime?
You're also saying, if I hear you correctly, the mayor should be responsible for the crime outcomes.
Absolutely.
How do you grade Mayor Tashara Jones and her job so far?
I think, look, I've got a great relationship with Mayor Jones. She's got huge challenges. We're working together on some things. She's got a talented staff and team, and I think she's doing a wonderful job.
There's also a very important question I have to ask you. As this goes to air on Thursday, it will also be opening day for the St. Louis Cardinals. Any prediction for the Cardinals this year?
Well, I'm a big Cardinal fan, and let me tell you about the Cardinals. They've always come out with a great team, and it would not surprise me if they get into the World Series this year.
There you go. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
On the record. Do you ever miss it, running for office again, or is that out of the cards for you? It's all.
I don't miss the position and the challenges and the hours, but I miss the people more than anything. There are some wonderful people working in city government. I made some close friends, great relationships, and we're very fortunate to have very talented people in government and in our community doing some wonderful things. So that's what I miss. I miss the people. The job, I did it long enough, but it was a big honor.
Longer than anybody else. We're glad to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to do it. My pleasure.
I'm not afraid. See, when I'm in those rooms, I represent you. When I'm in those rooms, they tell me, just go along and get along. I'm not going along and get along with nothing. They tell me to be quiet and just let people tell me how to do this job because I'm representing the people, and the people won't change. The people won't change. Because last time I checked, I seen those 300 murders in 1980 that we see on the paper, but you want to talk about crime was different. Well, tell me the year that crime was different. In the 1960s, the 1950s, the 1920s. But you want to go back to 1812 and have a mechanism to take over your police department that you paying for.
Earlier this week at a big rally there, using some inflated claims to do so. So we decided to check the record. Gardner said the city of St. Louis saw 300 murders in the year 1980, in part to say things used to be worse than they are now. But when we checked the record, we saw that homicide data shows, in fact, there were 225 murders in the city of St. Louis that year. And when you factor in population, it was a much bigger city back then. It registered a murder rate of 49 people per 100,000. Compare that to what we're seeing now. The average number of murders we see in the city of St. Louis under the last 5 years on record during Gardner's time in office, we've seen an average of 208 murders per year in a much smaller city. That murder rate clocking in at 70 people over 100,000 over the last 5 years on record under Gardner's time as the city prosecutor. She also said that the state took control of the city police department in 1812. The state of Missouri didn't exist in 1812. Congress admitted Missouri to the Union in 1821. And it wasn't until 40 years later in 1861 the state took control of the pro-abolitionist St. Louis Police Department. We wanted to let the record reflect those facts in their full context. Also, we want to play more of these remarks from you from Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner as she rallied her supporters at a time when she faces potential expulsion from her position if Missouri's Attorney General Andrew Bailey can convince a court that she exhibited willful neglect on the job.
I appreciate all the support. I appreciate the community. I appreciate my family. I love them. My office. You guys gonna make me cry. I'm not trying to cry here. Gangsters don't cry. No, I'm just joking. They want you to believe that the circuit attorney and what she's doing is not great because, you know, I love these words. Incompetent, right? They always want to say incompetent. Last time I checked, I got 20 years of a law license, okay? Last time I checked, this 8-year unelected attorney general has nothing on 20 years, right? And let me say, because I got the media here, unelected. He was never put in by nobody. And he want to tell you who you want in a representative in this community. Because you know why? Because I'm the only elected official in the criminal justice system. I'm the chief law enforcement officer in this jurisdiction, and they want to take away your right to have that person elected. And that's telling you something, right? We can't even elect our judges. The governor can't elect his judge in his jurisdiction, but he can tell you how your judge is acting yours. That's a problem. So this quote warrant or whatever I'm not supposed to talk about is baseless. It's foolishness. But guess what? Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
The circuit attorney took no questions that would interrogate or challenge her positions there. You might consider that the launch of her primary campaign to be reelected in 2024. She told the crowd of supporters there that she does intend to run and seek a third term. As you heard on the record earlier, there are a number of Democrats, a growing number of them, who want to see her face a challenge. Also relevant to that very announcement that she will seek a third term in office, a Missouri House Republican, Brad Crist, could not join us on the record today, but did file a bill in Jefferson City this week. Upon hearing that news that Kim Gardner would seek re-election, if that bill were to become law, it would say anyone removed from office through the quo warranto proceedings this legal challenge going on, could not reassume that office and would be disbarred or disqualified from seeking election to that same position in the future. And before we go, when you walk into a voting booth on Tuesday, chances are you'll see a question on your ballot asking you to approve or reject a 3% local sales tax on marijuana. That would be in addition to the 6% sales tax the state already collects. And if you live in one of 35 municipalities, cities, or towns in St. Louis County, you could see that same question twice, once for the county level and for the city or town where you live. And yes, at least for now, the Missouri Department of Revenue says if you vote yes and both of those get passed, you will have a double tax, 6% on top of 6% in those elections. We'll have all of the election results for you at this same time next Thursday after the Tuesday municipal elections. We'll see which of the 14 members of the Board of Aldermen take their seats in the new reduced wards in the city of St. Louis and have full election analysis for you at the same time next week. Until then, thank you for joining us, and we're off the record.